Marcus Chen looked at his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The company party was about to start and he felt nervous. He had been working at Hartwell Industries for 2 years now. Every day, he sat at his small desk in the accounting department doing numbers and filling out forms. It was a good job, but it was not exciting. Tonight was different, though. Tonight was the big company party that happened every year. All the employees would be there, even the big boss herself, Victoria Hartwell. Marcus had only seen her a few times before. She was always walking fast through the office, wearing expensive clothes and looking very serious. People said she was very rich and very smart. They also said she was hard to please. Marcus fixed his tie one more time and walked into the big hotel ballroom. The room was huge and fancy. There were round tables everywhere with white cloth covers. Pretty flowers sat in the middle of each table. Soft lights hung from the ceiling like stars. People were already there, talking and laughing. Everyone looked nice in their best clothes. Marcus got a drink and found a quiet spot near the wall. He was not good at talking to lots of people at parties. He liked to watch and listen instead. He could see his co-workers from the accounting department sitting together at a table near the front. They waved at him to come over, but he shook his head and smiled. He was happy where he was. As Marcus looked around the room, his eyes stopped on something in the corner. It was a big black piano. It looked old but well taken care of. The wood was shiny and the keys were white and clean. Marcus felt his heart beat a little faster when he saw it. He had not played a piano in months, not since he moved to his small apartment that had no room for one. Marcus had been playing piano since he was 6 years old. His mother had saved money for lessons even when times were hard. She always said music was important for the soul. Marcus loved to play. When he was sad or happy or worried, he would sit at the piano and let his fingers tell the story. But when he got this job, he had to sell his piano to pay for moving costs. He missed it every day. The party got busier as more people came in. Marcus saw his boss from the accounting department, Mr. Peterson. He was talking loudly about work stuff that nobody really wanted to hear about at a party. Marcus also saw Sarah from Human Resources. She always smiled and asked how his day was going. There were people from every department, marketing, sales, customer service, and more. Then the room got a little quieter. People stopped talking as much and started looking toward the main door. That was when Marcus saw her. Victoria Hartwell walked into the room like she owned it, which she did. She was wearing a dark blue dress that probably cost more than Marcus made in 3 months. Her hair was pulled back in a perfect style. She moved with confidence, like someone who never doubted herself. Marcus watched as Victoria moved through the room. People came up to her to shake hands and say hello. She smiled and talked to everyone, but Marcus could tell it was the kind of smile people use at work parties. It was polite but not real. She looked a little tired, like she had better things to do than be at this party. Victoria sat down at the head table with the other top bosses of the company. Marcus could see her from where he stood, but she was far away. He wondered what it would be like to talk to someone like her. She probably knew about art and traveled to fancy places. She probably ate at restaurants that Marcus had never heard of. They lived in completely different worlds. The party went on. People ate dinner and gave speeches about how well the company was doing. Marcus clapped when everyone else clapped, but his mind kept going back to the piano in the corner. Nobody had touched it all night. It just sat there waiting for someone to bring it to life. During dessert, Marcus found himself standing closer to the piano. He could see the brand name written in gold letters above the keys. It was a good piano, the kind that would sound beautiful if someone knew how to play it right. Marcus put his hand out and almost touched the keys, but then pulled back. This was not his piano. This was a fancy party, and he was just an accountant. "Do you play?" Marcus turned around fast. It was Tom from the marketing department. Tom was holding a piece of chocolate cake and looking at the piano, too. "A little bit," Marcus said. He always said this when people asked about his piano playing. He did not like to brag about it. "That's cool," Tom said. "I took lessons when I was a kid, but I was terrible. Could never get my fingers to do what my brain wanted them to do." He laughed and took another bite of cake. "You should play something." "I bet this old thing sounds amazing." Marcus shook his head quickly. "Oh no, I couldn't do that. This is a work party. People don't want to hear music right now." But Tom was not listening anymore. He was looking over at Victoria Hartwell's table and smiling like he had a funny idea. "Hey, you know what? I bet the boss would love to hear some music." She's always talking about how the company should support the arts and creativity in employees. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Please don't say anything to her. I'm serious, Tom. I just like to play for myself. But it was too late. Tom was already walking toward Victoria's table with his piece of cake. Marcus watched in horror as Tom leaned down and said something to Victoria. She looked over at Marcus and then at the piano. Her eyebrows went up a little bit, like she was surprised or interested. Marcus wanted to disappear. He looked around for a way to leave the room without anyone noticing, but there were too many people between him and the door. His face felt hot and his hands were starting to sweat. Why had he ever told anyone at work that he could play piano? He should have kept it a secret. Victoria was still looking at him from across the room. She said something to the people at her table, and they all turned to look at Marcus too. Now he really wanted to run away, but his feet would not move. He was stuck in place like a statue, holding his drink and wishing he had never come to this party. The music from the party speakers seemed louder now, and the voices of all the people talking seemed to mix together into one big noise. Marcus felt like he was in a dream where everything was moving in slow motion. He watched as Victoria stood up from her table and started walking toward him. Each step she took made his heart beat faster. This was it. The most important person in the company was coming to talk to him. And it was all because Tom had a big mouth and too much cake. Marcus tried to think of what he would say to her. Should he apologize for Tom bothering her? Should he explain that he really was not that good at piano? Should he just admit that he was too scared to play in front of all these people? Victoria was getting closer now. Marcus could see that she was not smiling her work smile anymore. She looked curious, like she was trying to figure something out. In just a few more seconds, she would be standing right next to him, and his quiet, normal life would never be the same again. Victoria Hartwell stopped right in front of Marcus. Up close, she looked even more impressive than she did from across the room. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent, like she could see right through people. Marcus felt very small standing next to her. He tried to stand up straighter and look more professional. So, Victoria said, her voice clear and confident, Tom tells me you play piano. Marcus nodded slowly. His mouth felt dry and he was not sure his voice would work properly. Yes, ma'am. A little bit. Victoria looked at the piano and then back at Marcus. A little bit, she repeated. That's what everyone says. Do you know how many people have told me they play piano a little bit? Dozens. But when I ask them to actually play something, they suddenly remember they're too rusty, or they need their special music books. Marcus did not know what to say to that. He just stood there holding his drink and hoping this conversation would end soon. But Victoria was not done talking. I went to music school for 2 years before I took over the family business, she continued. I can tell the difference between someone who actually plays and someone who just says they do. The real players get a certain look in their eyes when they see a good piano. You had that look. Marcus felt surprised. He had not known that Victoria knew about music. At work, she only talked about business and numbers and making the company more successful. He never would have guessed that she understood about the feeling that came over musicians when they saw their instrument. I studied classical piano, Victoria said. But I had to stop when my father got sick. Someone had to run the company and I was the only child. I haven't played in years, but I still remember what it feels like to want to touch the keys. This was the longest conversation Marcus had ever had with Victoria, and it was not at all what he had expected. She was talking to him like a real person, not like a boss talking to an employee. But he still felt nervous because he could tell she was leading up to something. Victoria looked around the room. The party was still going on, but some people were starting to notice that she was talking to Marcus by the piano. They were trying not to stare, but Marcus could feel their eyes on him. This made him even more uncomfortable. Here's what I think, Victoria said, turning back to Marcus. Everyone in this company talks a big game about their hidden talents. In meetings, people are always saying how creative they are, how they have skills we don't know about, but I never see any proof. It's all just talk. Marcus nodded politely, but he was starting to worry about where this was going. Victoria had a look in her eyes like she was making a business deal. It was the same look people said she got when she was about to make an offer that would change everything. I have an idea, Victoria said. A little challenge if you're interested. What kind of challenge? Marcus asked. His voice came out smaller than he wanted it to. Victoria smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that meant she was about to do something that would surprise everyone. Play that piano, she said, pointing to the corner. Play something real, something that shows you actually know what you're doing. If you can do that, if you can prove that you're not just another person who talks big but can't deliver, then I'll go out with you." Marcus felt like someone had just poured cold water over his head. Did she really just say what he thought she said? He looked at her face to see if she was joking, but she looked completely serious. Around them, the conversations got quieter as more people started to notice what was happening. "I'm sorry, what?" Marcus said, thinking he must have heard wrong. "You heard me," Victoria said louder now so that people nearby could definitely hear. "Play that piano and prove you're not all talk, and I'll consider going on a date with you. But it has to be good. I know real music when I hear it, and I won't be impressed by Twinkle Twinkle Little Star." The conversations around them stopped completely now. Marcus could feel every person in their part of the room staring at them. He heard someone whisper, "Oh my God, did she just say that?" And someone else shush them quickly. Marcus felt his face getting hot again. This was like a bad dream. He had come to this party hoping to eat some free food and maybe talk to a few coworkers before going home early. Now the CEO of the company was challenging him to play piano in front of everyone, and somehow a date was involved. None of this made any sense. "Ma'am," Marcus said quietly, hoping Victoria would lower her voice. "I don't think—" "You don't think what?" Victoria interrupted. "You don't think you can do it? Or you don't think I'm serious?" She crossed her arms and looked at him like she was waiting for him to back down. "Because I am completely serious. This company is full of people who make excuses instead of showing what they can really do. I want to see if you're different." More people were gathering around now. Marcus could see Tom looking guilty and excited at the same time. Sarah from Human Resources was covering her mouth with her hand like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Mr. Peterson was shaking his head like he thought the whole thing was unprofessional. Marcus looked at the piano. It suddenly seemed much bigger and more frightening than it had a few minutes ago. When he was alone in his apartment, dreaming about playing again, it had seemed like the most natural thing in the world. But playing in front of all these people, especially in front of Victoria, was completely different. "Everyone says they have talents," Victoria continued, her voice carrying across the room now. "Everyone has some story about how they used to be good at something before life got in the way. But I never see anyone actually demonstrate these supposed talents. It's all just wishful thinking and excuses." Marcus realized that this was about more than just him. Victoria was making a point to everyone at the party. She was challenging not just Marcus but the whole idea that people had hidden abilities they never showed. This made him feel a little less like she was picking on him personally, but it also made the pressure much worse. "So what do you say?" Victoria asked. "Are you going to show us what you can really do? Or are you going to make an excuse like everyone else?" The room was so quiet now that Marcus could hear the air conditioning humming in the background. Everyone was waiting for his answer. He could feel dozens of eyes staring at him, waiting to see if he would accept the challenge or find a way to escape. Marcus looked at Victoria's face. Behind her confident expression, he thought he saw something else. Maybe she really did miss playing music. Maybe she was tired of being around people who only talked about business. Maybe she wanted to see if there was anyone in her company who had real passion for something besides making money. Or maybe she was just testing him to see how he would react under pressure. Maybe this was some kind of management technique he had never heard of. Marcus had no idea what Victoria was really thinking. But he knew that whatever he decided right now would change how everyone at work saw him. He looked at the piano again. His fingers were tingling just thinking about touching the keys. It had been so long since he had played for anyone except himself. Part of him wanted to run away and pretend this had never happened. But another part of him, the part that had been missing music every single day, wanted to walk over to that piano and show everyone what he could really do. Marcus took a deep breath and looked back at Victoria. Her eyes were still challenging him, waiting to see what kind of person he really was. Around them, the entire party had stopped to watch what would happen next. This was the moment when Marcus would have to decide who he wanted to be: the quiet accountant who played it safe, or the musician he had always been in his heart. Marcus set his drink down on a nearby table. His hand was shaking a little, but he tried not to let anyone see. The whole room was watching him now, waiting to see what he would do. He could hear whispers from different groups of people, but he could not make out what they were saying. He looked at Victoria one more time. She was standing with her arms crossed, looking like she expected him to make an excuse and walk away. This made Marcus feel a little angry, which surprised him. He was usually a quiet person who did not like to make waves. But something about the way Victoria was looking at him made him want to prove her wrong. "Okay," Marcus said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'll do it." A murmur went through the crowd. Some people looked excited, like they were about to see a good show. Others looked worried, like they thought Marcus was making a big mistake. Victoria raised her eyebrows like she had not really expected him to say yes. Marcus started walking toward the piano. Each step felt like it took forever. The room seemed to get bigger as he walked, and the piano seemed to get smaller. By the time he reached it, he felt like he was in a completely different world from the party that was happening behind him. He lifted the lid of the piano bench and looked inside. There were some old sheets of music, but they were pieces he did not recognize. He closed the bench and sat down. The bench was the right height, and the piano looked well taken care of. Someone had been playing it regularly, or at least keeping it tuned. Marcus put his hands on the keys but did not press down yet. The keys felt cool and smooth under his fingers. Just touching them made him remember all the hours he had spent practicing when he was younger. He remembered his first recital when he was so nervous he almost threw up. He remembered the feeling of playing a piece perfectly for the first time. He remembered his mother clapping and smiling when he got home from lessons. Behind him, the room was completely quiet now. Marcus had never played for this many people before. At his biggest recital, there had been maybe 50 people in the audience. Tonight, there were at least 200 people watching him. The thought made his stomach feel tight. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to think of what to play. Victoria had said it had to be something real, something that would prove he knew what he was doing. He could not play something simple like Happy Birthday or a basic nursery rhyme. But he also could not play something so hard that he would make mistakes and embarrass himself. Then he remembered a piece his piano teacher had given him in high school. It was a nocturne by Chopin, one of the most beautiful pieces Marcus had ever learned. It was not the hardest piece he knew, but it was not easy either. More importantly, it was a piece that always made him feel calm and happy when he played it. If he was going to play in front of all these people, he wanted to play something that meant something to him. Marcus put his fingers in position and took a deep breath. For just a moment, he forgot about Victoria and the challenge and all the people watching him. He thought about the music and the story it told. The nocturne was like a quiet conversation in the dark, soft and gentle but full of emotion. He pressed the first key. The sound that came from the piano was better than Marcus had expected. It was rich and clear, filling the whole room without being too loud. Marcus smiled a little bit. This was a good piano, much better than the old one he had learned on at home. The first few notes of the nocturne were simple and quiet. Marcus played them carefully, listening to make sure each note sounded right. As he got more comfortable, he started to relax. His fingers remembered the patterns they had learned years ago. It was like riding a bicycle. Once his hands found the right positions, the music started to flow naturally. The nocturne began to build. The melody got more complex with more notes in each hand. Marcus had to stretch his fingers to reach all the keys. But he had practiced this piece so many times that his hands knew where to go without him having to think about it. The music filled the room, gentle but powerful. Behind him, Marcus could hear that the room was still completely quiet. No one was talking or moving around. He could not tell if this was good or bad. Maybe they were all bored, or maybe they were waiting for him to make a mistake. But as he kept playing, he started to care less about what they thought. The music was taking over, and it felt too good to worry about anything else. The middle section of the nocturne was Marcus's favorite part. The melody moved between his right hand and his left hand, like two people having a conversation. Sometimes they agreed with each other, and sometimes they said different things at the same time, but they always sounded good together. Marcus had always thought this part sounded like two people who cared about each other talking quietly before going to sleep. As Marcus played this section, he felt like he was back in his childhood bedroom, practicing late at night when the rest of the house was quiet. He felt like he was in his college dorm room, playing to calm down after a hard day of classes. He felt like he was in all the places where music had helped him feel better when life was difficult. The piano was not just an instrument. It was like an old friend who had always been there for him. The nocturne started to get more dramatic. The notes came faster and Marcus had to move his hands quickly across the keys. This was the part where many people made mistakes because they tried to play too fast or too loud. But Marcus remembered his teacher telling him that the most important thing was to keep the melody clear. Even when the music got complicated, Marcus could feel sweat on his forehead, but his hands felt steady and sure. Every note was coming out exactly the way he wanted it to. He was not just playing the notes that were written on the page. He was telling the story that the music wanted to tell. This was what his teacher had always called playing from the heart instead of just playing the notes. The room around Marcus seemed to disappear completely. He forgot about Victoria and her challenge. He forgot about his coworkers and their surprised faces. He forgot about his job and his small apartment and all the reasons he had stopped playing music regularly. All that existed was him and the piano and the beautiful song they were creating together. The nocturne began to wind down. The notes got softer and slower, like someone getting tired and ready to rest. This was always the hardest part for Marcus to play, because it required so much control. It was easy to play loud, dramatic music. It was much harder to play quiet, gentle music that still had feeling in it. Marcus pressed the keys more softly, letting each note fade naturally before playing the next one. The melody got simpler, returning to the quiet conversation that had started the piece. But now it sounded different, like the conversation was ending and the two people were saying goodbye for the night. The last few notes were the softest of all. Marcus played them so gently that they seemed to float in the air before disappearing. When he played the final note, he held it until the sound faded completely. Then he lifted his hands from the keys and sat back on the bench. The room was still completely silent. Marcus turned around slowly to look at the audience. Every single person was staring at him with expressions he had never seen before. Some people looked shocked, like they could not believe what they had just heard. Others looked amazed, like they had just seen something magical happen. A few people had tears in their eyes. Victoria was standing exactly where Marcus had left her, but her expression had changed completely. The challenging, businesslike look was gone. Instead, she looked stunned, like someone had just told her something she had never expected to hear. Her arms were no longer crossed. Her mouth was slightly open, like she had been about to say something but forgotten what it was. For a long moment, nobody moved or said anything. Marcus started to worry that maybe he had played badly, and everyone was too polite to say so. Maybe they were all trying to think of nice things to say about a terrible performance. Maybe he should apologize and explain that he was out of practice. Then someone started clapping. The clapping started with just one person, but within seconds the entire room exploded into applause. It was not polite party clapping. It was the kind of loud, enthusiastic clapping that people do when they have just seen something incredible. Some people were clapping over their heads. Others were whistling and cheering. Marcus sat on the piano bench, completely overwhelmed. He had never received applause like this before, not even at his best recitals when he was younger. The sound filled the whole ballroom and seemed to go on forever. People were smiling and nodding at him from across the room. Some were wiping their eyes with tissues. But the person Marcus was most curious about was Victoria. She was still standing in the same spot, but now she was clapping too. Her clapping was slower and more thoughtful than everyone else's, like she was thinking deeply about what she had just heard. The shocked expression was still on her face, but now there was something else there too. It looked almost like respect. When the applause finally started to die down, people began talking excitedly to each other. Marcus could hear bits and pieces of their conversations as they drifted toward him. "I had no idea Marcus could play like that," Sarah from Human Resources was saying to someone from the marketing department. "I've worked with him for 2 years, and he never mentioned that he was practically a professional musician. That was better than most of the concerts I've paid to see downtown," said Mr. Johnson from the sales team. "Where did he learn to play like that? That wasn't just hobby-level playing. That was serious music." Marcus felt his face getting red from all the attention. He was not used to being the center of everyone's focus. At work, he was the quiet guy in the corner who did his job well but never stood out. Now everyone was looking at him like he was a completely different person. Tom from marketing pushed through the crowd and reached Marcus first. He had a huge grin on his face and looked like he might burst from excitement. "Marcus, that was incredible," Tom said, putting his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "I mean, I knew you said you played piano, but I thought you meant like, chopsticks or something. That was real music. Where did you learn to play like that?" Before Marcus could answer, More people crowded around the piano. Everyone wanted to know the same things. Where had he studied? How long had he been playing? Why hadn't he ever mentioned that he was so talented? Did he give lessons? Had he ever performed professionally? Marcus tried to answer their questions, but there were too many people talking at once. He felt grateful for their enthusiasm, but also a little trapped. All he wanted was to look over at Victoria and see what she was thinking, but there were too many people between them. I started playing when I was 6, Marcus said to the crowd around him. My mother wanted me to learn music. I took lessons all through school and studied music in college for 2 years before I switched to accounting. 2 years, said someone from the back of the group. Just 2 years of college music? That sounded like you'd been studying for decades. Well, I kept practicing on my own, Marcus explained. Even after I changed majors, I still played every day. Music has always been important to me. I just never thought it was something I should talk about at work. Are you kidding? Said a woman from customer service. If I could play like that, I would tell everyone. That was beautiful. I got goosebumps during that soft part in the middle. Marcus smiled at her. Thank you. That means a lot to me. While Marcus was talking to his coworkers, he kept trying to see where Victoria was. He finally spotted her standing a little ways away from the crowd, talking quietly to some of the other executives. She kept looking over at him while she talked, and Marcus wondered what she was saying. Mr. Peterson from accounting pushed his way through the group and stood in front of Marcus. He looked confused and a little annoyed, like someone had just told him that 2 + 2 = 5. Marcus, Mr. Peterson said, in all the time you've worked for me, you never once mentioned that you had this kind of talent. Why would you keep something like this a secret? Marcus thought about how to answer this question. The truth was that he had learned not to talk about music at work, because most people did not understand. When he told people he played piano, they usually asked him to play Piano Man at parties or assumed he could only play simple songs. He had gotten tired of explaining that classical music was different, so he had just stopped mentioning it. I guess I didn't think it was relevant to accounting, Marcus said finally. I mean, playing piano doesn't help me balance books or create spreadsheets, but it shows that you have discipline and creativity and attention to detail, Mr. Peterson said. Those are exactly the qualities we want in our employees. You should have put this on your resume. Marcus had actually left his music background off his resume on purpose. He had been worried that people would think he was not serious about business if they knew he had studied art. Now he was starting to realize that maybe he had been wrong about that. The crowd around the piano was getting bigger instead of smaller. People who had been sitting at tables across the room were coming over to hear what all the excitement was about. When they found out that Quiet Marcus from accounting had just played a stunning piano piece, they wanted to hear the story too. You have to play something else, said a young woman from the marketing department. That was so beautiful, but now I want to hear more. Do you know any other pieces like that? Oh yes, agreed several other people. Play another one. Marcus felt flattered but also nervous. Playing one piece had been scary enough. Playing a second piece would mean even more pressure and attention. But when he looked at all the eager faces around him, he found it hard to say no. Maybe later, Marcus said diplomatically. I think I should let other people enjoy the party too. Are you kidding? Tom laughed. This is the best part of the party. Forget the boring speeches and the rubber chicken dinner. This is actually interesting. While Marcus was trying to figure out how to politely avoid playing again, the crowd around him suddenly got quiet. People stepped back and made a path. Marcus looked up and saw Victoria walking toward him. She had finally finished her conversation with the other executives and was coming to talk to him directly. The expression on Victoria's face was unlike anything Marcus had seen before. At work, she always looked confident and in control, like she knew exactly what was going to happen next. But now she looked uncertain, almost vulnerable. It was like seeing a completely different person wearing Victoria's clothes. She stopped right in front of Marcus and looked at him for a long moment without saying anything. The crowd around them got very quiet, waiting to hear what she would say. Everyone remembered her challenge and was curious about what would happen next. Marcus, Victoria said finally, her voice softer than usual. That was not what I expected. Marcus did not know how to respond to that. Was she disappointed? Surprised? Happy? Her tone did not give him any clues. What did you expect? Marcus asked. Victoria glanced around at all the people listening to their conversation, then looked back at Marcus. Honestly, I expected you to play something simple and safe, maybe make a few mistakes and then make an excuse about being out of practice. I've heard a lot of people claim they could play piano, and they all did exactly that. She paused and shook her head slightly, like she was still trying to process what had happened. But that, Victoria continued, gesturing toward the piano, that was not amateur playing. That was professional level music. That was the kind of playing I heard when I was studying at conservatory. Where on earth did you learn to play like that? The crowd around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting for Marcus's answer. Even Marcus was surprised by Victoria's reaction. He had hoped to play well enough to avoid embarrassing himself, but he had not expected to truly impress her. From the way she was talking, it sounded like his playing had reminded her of serious musicians she had known in music school. I had a very good teacher, Marcus said simply. Mrs. Rodriguez. She taught me from when I was 6 until I graduated high school. She used to say that if you're going to learn a piece of music, you might as well learn it right. Mrs. Rodriguez, Victoria repeated thoughtfully. Was she a professional musician? She played with the City Symphony Orchestra for 30 years, Marcus said. She was very serious about music. She made me practice scales for an hour every day before I was allowed to play any real pieces. Victoria nodded. Like this explained everything. That makes sense. I could hear the technical foundation in your playing. Every note was clean and controlled. But more than that, you understood the music. You weren't just playing the notes, you were telling the story that Chopin wanted to tell. Marcus felt a warm feeling spread through his chest. Having someone who really understood music recognize what he had tried to do meant more to him than all the enthusiastic applause from people who just thought it sounded pretty. So, Victoria said, and Marcus could hear a small smile in her voice even though her expression was still serious. It looks like I owe you a date. 3 days after the company party, Marcus still could not believe what had happened. Every time he walked through the office, people smiled at him and said things like, "Hey, it's our famous piano player," or "When are you going to give us another concert?" He was not used to being noticed at work, and all the attention made him feel both happy and nervous. The biggest change was that Victoria had actually kept her word about the date. The day after the party, her assistant had called Marcus at his desk and asked if he was free for dinner on Friday night. Marcus had been so surprised that he almost said he was busy, just out of habit, but then he remembered playing the piano and Victoria's shocked expression, and he said yes. Now it was Friday evening, and Marcus was getting ready for the strangest date of his life. He had never gone out with anyone from work before, and he definitely had never gone out with someone who was his boss's boss's boss. He changed his shirt 3 times before settling on a simple blue button-down that his sister had bought him for Christmas. Victoria had suggested they meet at a restaurant called Chez Laurent, which Marcus had never heard of. When he looked it up online, he discovered it was one of the fanciest places in the city. The menu did not even have prices listed, which Marcus knew meant it was very expensive. He worried that he would not know how to act in such a fancy place, or that he would order something wrong and embarrass himself. Marcus arrived at the restaurant 5 minutes early and gave his name to the hostess. She smiled and led him to a small table by the window. The restaurant was beautiful, with soft lighting and fresh flowers on every table. Classical music played quietly in the background. Marcus recognized it as a piece by Bach that he had learned to play years ago. Victoria arrived exactly on time, wearing a simple black dress that somehow looked both elegant and casual. Marcus stood up when he saw her, not sure if he should shake her hand or just say hello. She solved the problem by sitting down immediately and smiling at him. "Thank you for coming," Victoria said. "I wasn't sure if you would actually show up." "Why wouldn't I show up?" Marcus asked, confused. Victoria picked up her menu and glanced at it briefly. "Well, you've had 3 days to think about this and realize that going on a date with your CEO might not be the smartest career move. I thought you might have second thoughts." Marcus had actually had second thoughts many times over the past 3 days. His sister had called it career suicide when he told her about the date. His coworker Tom had said it was either the best thing that could happen to him or the worst, with no middle ground. But every time Marcus thought about backing out, he remembered the look on Victoria's face when he finished playing the piano. She had looked genuinely moved by his music, and he wanted to understand that better. "I did think about it," Marcus admitted, But I'm curious about something. What's that? You said you studied music before you took over the company. Why did you really make that challenge at the party? It seemed like more than just testing whether I could actually play. Victoria was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the busy street. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than Marcus had ever heard it at work. You're right, it was more than that. She paused and looked back at Marcus. Do you know what it's like to be surrounded by people who only want to talk about profit margins and market share and quarterly reports? Every conversation I have at work is about business. Every social event I go to is full of people who want to network or make deals. I can't remember the last time someone talked to me about something they were passionate about just because they loved it. Marcus nodded slowly. He was starting to understand something about Victoria that he had never considered before. At work, she was always surrounded by people, but maybe she was actually lonely. When I heard you might actually play piano, Victoria continued, I thought maybe, just maybe, I would meet someone who understood what it was like to love music. Someone who knew that there are important things in life besides making money. The waiter came and took their orders. Marcus chose the first thing on the menu that sounded familiar, while Victoria ordered in French without looking at the menu. After the waiter left, Victoria smiled at Marcus. You look nervous, she said. I am nervous, Marcus admitted. I've never been on a date with someone I work for. I don't really know how this is supposed to work. How about we pretend we don't work together? Victoria suggested. Just for tonight, let's forget about Hartwell Industries and talk about other things. Tell me about your music teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez. She sounds like she was important to you. Marcus felt himself relaxing a little bit. Talking about Mrs. Rodriguez was easy because he had loved her like a grandmother. She was amazing, Marcus said. Very strict, but in a good way. She made me understand that music isn't just about playing the right notes at the right time. It's about communicating emotions that you can't put into words. That's exactly right, Victoria said, leaning forward with interest. That's what I loved most about playing piano. When I was having a terrible day, I could sit down and play something sad, and somehow I would feel better. When I was excited about something, I could play something joyful, and it was like the music was celebrating with me. Do you miss it? Marcus asked. Playing, I mean. Victoria was quiet for a long time. More than I thought I would, she said finally. When I first stopped playing to focus on business, I told myself it was just temporary. I thought I would go back to music once the company was running smoothly. But years went by, and there was always another crisis to handle, another deal to make, another problem to solve. Eventually, I realized I had completely forgotten what it felt like to create something beautiful, just because I wanted to. The waiter brought their food, and they ate in comfortable silence for a while. Marcus was surprised to discover that he was not nervous anymore. Victoria was not acting like his boss tonight. She was acting like a regular person who missed something important from her past. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Sure. Why did you stop studying music in college? You're clearly talented enough to have made it your career. Marcus put down his fork and thought about how to answer. This was something he had never really explained to anyone, not even his family. Fear, mostly, he said honestly. Mrs. Rodriguez wanted me to audition for music schools, and I probably could have gotten into some good programs. But I was scared that I wasn't good enough to make it as a professional musician. I was scared of being poor and struggling to pay rent. I was scared that if I tried to make music my job, I might stop loving it. Victoria nodded like she understood completely. So you chose the safe path. Yeah, accounting is reliable. People always need accountants. I knew I could get a steady job and pay my bills and have a normal life. But you kept playing. I couldn't stop, Marcus said. Even when I sold my piano and moved to an apartment with thin walls where I couldn't practice, I still heard music in my head all the time. I still thought about pieces I wanted to learn and songs I wanted to play. Music isn't something you can just turn off. No, Victoria agreed quietly. It's not. They talked for 2 more hours about music, books, movies, and places they wanted to travel. Marcus learned that Victoria had read all the same classic novels he had loved in college. She learned that Marcus volunteered at a literacy program on weekends, teaching adults how to read. They discovered they both loved old movies and both hated crowded parties. As the evening went on, Marcus forgot more and more that he was having dinner with the CEO of his company. Victoria was funny and smart and easy to talk to. She asked thoughtful questions and seemed genuinely interested in his answers. When she talked about her own life, she was honest about the parts that were difficult or lonely. I have to ask, Marcus said as they were finishing dessert. What happens on Monday when we're back at work? Do we pretend this never happened? Victoria considered this question seriously. I don't know, she said. I've never been in this situation before either. But I do know that I've had a better time tonight than I've had in months. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I thought you would be intimidated by me. Most people are. Or I thought you would try to use this date to ask for a promotion or special treatment at work. But you haven't mentioned work once all evening. I was too busy having a good time to think about work, Marcus said truthfully. Victoria smiled, and it was completely different from her business smile. It was warm and genuine and reached her eyes. So was I, she said. When the waiter brought the check, Victoria picked it up before Marcus could even reach for it. This was my idea, she said when Marcus started to protest. Besides, I can afford it better than you can. Marcus felt a little embarrassed about the money difference between them, but Victoria said it so matter-of-factly that it didn't seem like a big deal to her. They walked outside together, and Victoria's driver was waiting by the curb with a black car that probably cost more than Marcus made in 2 years. Can I give you a ride home? Victoria asked. That's okay, Marcus said. I can take the bus. Victoria looked at him like he had said something surprising. The bus? It's 10 o'clock on a Friday night. I take the bus everywhere, Marcus said with a shrug. I don't have a car. Monday morning came too quickly for Marcus. He had spent the weekend thinking about his dinner with Victoria and wondering what would happen when they saw each other at work. Would she act like nothing had happened? Would things be awkward between them? Would other people notice that something had changed? Marcus got to the office early, hoping to settle into his normal routine before Victoria arrived. He sat at his desk and tried to focus on a spreadsheet, but he kept looking toward the elevator, waiting to see her. When she finally walked through the office at 9:15, she was wearing her usual professional outfit and carrying her briefcase like any other Monday. Their eyes met for just a moment across the room. Victoria gave him a small smile, not her business smile, but the real one he had seen at dinner. Then she disappeared into her office, and Marcus did not see her again for the rest of the morning. At lunchtime, Marcus was eating a sandwich at his desk when his phone buzzed with a text message. He almost ignored it, thinking it was probably spam, but then he remembered that Victoria had his number now. The message said, "Coffee later? There's a place called Brewster's 2 blocks from the office, 3 p.m. Marcus stared at the message for a full minute before typing back, "Yes." At 3 p.m., Marcus walked to Brewster's coffee shop. It was a small, cozy place with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh coffee beans. Victoria was already there, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups of coffee in front of her. She had changed from her business suit into jeans and a sweater, which made her look younger and more relaxed. "I hope you drink coffee," Victoria said as Marcus sat down. "I ordered for both of us." "I live on coffee," Marcus said, taking a sip. It was good coffee, much better than the stuff they had at work. "So," Victoria said, "how was your first day back at work after our dinner? Did people treat you differently?" Marcus thought about this. "A little bit. A few people asked me how my weekend was, which they usually don't do, and Tom from marketing winked at me when I walked past his desk, which was weird." Victoria laughed. "Tom has a big mouth. I'm sure he's told half the office that we went out. Does that bother you?" Marcus asked. "It might cause some gossip," Victoria said, "but I've learned not to worry too much about what people think. If I did, I would never make any decisions at all." They sat quietly for a moment, sipping their coffee and watching people walk by outside the window. "Can I tell you something?" Victoria said. "Of course. I haven't stopped thinking about our conversation on Friday night. It's been a long time since someone asked me what I wanted instead of what the company needed." Marcus remembered asking Victoria about her music and whether she missed it. At the time, it had seemed like a normal question, but now he realized that maybe people did not usually ask Victoria personal things. "What do you want?" Marcus asked. Victoria smiled. "That's exactly what I mean. Most people would never ask me that question." "Why not?" "Because they assume they already know the answer. They think I want money or power or success. And maybe I do want those things, but they're not the only things I want." Victoria looked out the window again, watching a mother push a stroller down the sidewalk. "I want to feel like my life has meaning beyond making profits," she said. I want to have conversations about ideas instead of just business strategies. I want to remember what it feels like to create something beautiful. You could start playing piano again? Marcus suggested. I've been thinking about that, Victoria said. My grandmother's piano is still in my house. I haven't touched it in 5 years, but it's still there. Maybe I should try playing something simple just to see if I remember how. You should, Marcus said enthusiastically. It's like riding a bicycle. Your fingers will remember even if your brain doesn't. They talked for another hour about music, but also about books they were reading and movies they wanted to see. Marcus learned that Victoria volunteered at a children's hospital, reading stories to kids who were too sick to go home. Victoria learned that Marcus wrote poetry in his spare time, though he was too shy to show it to anyone. You're full of surprises, Victoria said. Piano, poetry, teaching people to read. Is there anything you don't do? I'm terrible at cooking, Marcus said. I eat cereal for dinner at least 3 times a week. I can cook, Victoria said. My grandmother taught me when I was little. I don't get to do it much anymore because I'm always working late, but I used to love making big Sunday dinners. That sounds nice, Marcus said. I bet your house smells amazing when you cook. You should come over sometime and find out, Victoria said, then looked surprised at her own words. I mean, if you want to. I know it's probably weird dating your boss. You're not exactly my boss, Marcus pointed out. You're my boss's boss's boss. That's even worse. Victoria laughed, but Marcus did not think it was worse. The more time he spent with Victoria away from the office, the more he liked her as a person. She was smart and funny and kind, and she seemed to genuinely enjoy spending time with him. The fact that she was rich and powerful was less important than the fact that she made him laugh and listened carefully when he talked. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a routine. They would meet for coffee a few times a week, always at places away from the office. Sometimes they would go to museums or bookstores on weekends. Victoria showed Marcus art galleries he had never heard of, and Marcus showed Victoria quiet parks where they could sit and talk without being interrupted. The more time they spent together, the more Marcus realized how lonely Victoria's life had been before. She had money and success, but she did not have many real friends. Most people wanted something from her: a job, a business deal, a donation to their charity. It was rare for someone to just want to spend time with her because they enjoyed her company. Can I ask you something personal? Marcus said one afternoon when they were walking through the botanical gardens. Everything you ask me is personal, Victoria pointed out. That's what I like about talking to you. Why haven't you ever gotten married? I mean, you're successful and beautiful and smart. I would think lots of people would want to date you. Victoria was quiet for a long time. They walked past a pond with ducks swimming in circles, and Marcus started to think she was not going to answer the question. I was engaged once, Victoria said finally, about 3 years ago, to a man named Richard who ran another company in the city. Everyone thought we were perfect for each other, because we both understood business and we both came from wealthy families. She stopped walking and sat down on a bench, overlooking the pond. But Richard never asked me what I wanted, Victoria continued. He assumed he knew what I wanted because we came from similar backgrounds. He planned our whole future without asking my opinion. Big house in the suburbs, country club memberships, charity galas every weekend. It was the life everyone expected me to want, but it felt like wearing clothes that didn't fit. What happened? Marcus asked, sitting down next to her. I broke off the engagement 2 weeks before the wedding. Richard was furious. He said I was throwing away the perfect life, but it wasn't perfect for me. It was perfect for the person everyone thought I should be. Marcus understood this feeling. He had chosen accounting instead of music for similar reasons, because it was what people expected him to want, not what he actually wanted. Do you regret it? Marcus asked. Breaking up with Richard? No, but I do regret that I let other people's expectations control my choices for so long. I spent years trying to be the person I thought I should be instead of figuring out who I actually was. They sat quietly for a while, watching the ducks and listening to the wind in the trees. What about you? Victoria asked. Have you ever been serious about anyone? Marcus felt embarrassed. Compared to Victoria's story about engagement and wealthy boyfriends, his dating history seemed very ordinary. I had a girlfriend in college named Amy, Marcus said. We dated for 2 years and talked about getting married after graduation. But when I switched from music to accounting, she said she didn't recognize me anymore. She said I had given up on my dreams and she didn't want to be with someone who played it safe all the time. That must have hurt. It did, but she wasn't wrong. I did give up on my dreams. I chose security over passion, and it changed who I was. Amy wanted to date the musician, not the accountant. And now? Victoria asked. Marcus looked at her sitting next to him on the bench. She was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, and her hair was a little messy from the wind. She looked nothing like the intimidating CEO who gave speeches at company meetings. She looked like someone he could talk to about anything. Now I'm starting to think that maybe it's not too late to be both, Marcus said. Maybe I can be an accountant who also plays piano and writes poetry and cares about beautiful things. Maybe I don't have to choose between being practical and being passionate. Victoria smiled. I like that idea. And I like spending time with someone who reminds me that there's more to life than quarterly reports and board meetings. Even though I'm just an employee, especially because you're just an employee. You're the only person in my life who knew me before you knew how much money I had. You liked me because I appreciated your music, not because I could do something for your career. Marcus realized this was true. When he first started liking Victoria, 2 months after the piano incident, Marcus was learning that dating Victoria was more complicated than he had expected. Not because of Victoria herself. She continued to be thoughtful, funny, and genuinely interested in his life. The complications came from everywhere else. At work, the gossip had died down a little, but it had not gone away completely. Marcus could feel people watching him when he walked through the office. Some co-workers were friendly and seemed happy for him, but others gave him strange looks, like they were trying to figure out his secret plan. The worst part was when people started treating him differently in meetings. If Marcus made a suggestion about a project, some people would nod enthusiastically, even when his idea was not very good. Other people would ignore everything he said, like they assumed he was only there because of his relationship with Victoria. Either way, Marcus felt like people were not seeing him as just another employee anymore. It's getting weird at work, Marcus told Victoria one evening when they were having dinner at her house. Victoria had cooked chicken with herbs from her garden, and it was the best meal Marcus had eaten in months. Weird how? Victoria asked, though Marcus could tell from her expression that she already knew what he meant. People don't treat me like a regular person anymore. Half of them act like I'm suddenly the most important guy in the accounting department, and the other half act like I don't belong there at all. Victoria sighed and put down her fork. I was hoping this wouldn't happen, but I'm not surprised. Dating someone you work with is always complicated. Dating someone you work for is even worse. Technically, you don't work for me, Marcus pointed out, trying to make a joke. That's not how everyone else sees it, Victoria said seriously. They see the CEO dating an employee, and they assume it means something about fairness and favoritism and power. Marcus had been worried about this exact problem since their first coffee date, but he had hoped it would get better with time instead of worse. Now it seemed like the opposite was happening. What do you think we should do? Marcus asked. Victoria looked out the window at her backyard, where she had a small garden and a bird feeder that attracted cardinals and blue jays. I don't know, she said honestly. I've never been in this situation before. The next week, the workplace situation got even more complicated when Marcus was called into Mr. Peterson's office for his annual performance review. Marcus, Mr. Peterson said, looking uncomfortable, you've always been a solid employee. Your work is accurate, you meet your deadlines, and you're reliable. But I have to ask, are you planning to stay in the accounting department long term? What do you mean? Marcus asked, though he had a bad feeling about where this conversation was going. Well, given your relationship with Ms. Hartwell, I wondered if you might be looking to move to a different part of the company, maybe something in management or executive planning. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Mr. Peterson, I have never asked Victoria for any special treatment at work. I don't want to be promoted because of who I'm dating. I want to earn any promotions I get. I believe you, Mr. Peterson said, but perception is important too. Some people in the department are starting to wonder if they're being passed over for opportunities because they don't have your connections. What opportunities? Marcus asked. I haven't gotten any special projects or raises or anything different from what I had before. I know that, and you know that, but not everyone sees it that way. I'm just saying that it might be easier for everyone if you considered transferring to a different department. That way, there wouldn't be any questions about fairness. Marcus left the meeting feeling frustrated and confused. He had not asked for any of this attention, All he had done was play piano at a party and go on some dates with someone he liked. Now people were suggesting he should change jobs to avoid gossip. That evening, Marcus met Victoria for coffee and told her about his conversation with Mr. Peterson. "He wants you to transfer?" Victoria asked, looking upset. He suggested it might be easier. "He's worried that people think I'm getting special treatment." Victoria was quiet for a long time, stirring her coffee even though she had not added any sugar to it. "Maybe he's right," she said finally. "You think I should transfer?" "I think we need to be realistic about this situation. As long as you work in a department that reports to me, people are going to question everything that happens to you. Every time you get assigned to an interesting project or receive a good performance review, people will wonder if it's because you're dating me." Marcus understood her logic, but it still felt unfair. "So I have to choose between dating you and keeping my job?" "No. You have to choose between dating me and keeping the specific job. There are other positions in the company, other departments where the reporting structure would be different. What if I don't want to transfer? What if I like working in accounting?" Victoria looked at him with a sad expression. "Then we have a problem." The conversation left Marcus feeling upset and unsure about everything. He had worked hard to build a career in accounting and he was good at his job. It did not seem fair that he should have to give that up just because he was dating someone. But he also did not want to make things difficult for Victoria or cause problems at work for his co-workers. The situation got even more complicated the following week when the company had to make a big decision about a new computer system. There were two options: an expensive system that would work better, or a cheaper system that would work well enough. Marcus had been researching both options as part of his job, and he had strong opinions about which one the company should choose. In the meeting where they discussed the decision, Marcus argued for the more expensive system. He had prepared charts and data showing why it would save money in the long run and make everyone's job easier. But as soon as he finished his presentation, he could see people looking at each other with suspicious expressions. After the meeting, Marcus heard two co-workers talking in the hallway. "Of course, Marcus wants the expensive system," one of them said. "He probably knows Victoria will approve whatever he recommends." "It's not fair," the other one replied. "The rest of us have to actually convince people our ideas are good. Marcus just has to whisper in the boss's ear at dinner." Marcus felt angry and hurt. His recommendation had been based on careful research and analysis, not on his relationship with Victoria. But he realized that no matter how good his work was, some people would always assume he was getting help from his girlfriend. That night, Marcus called his sister Emma to talk about the situation. Emma was a nurse who had always given him good advice about difficult situations. "It sounds like you and Victoria need to have a serious conversation about what you both want," Emma said. "Are you dating her because you like her as a person, or are you dating her because she's rich and powerful?" "I like her as a person," Marcus said immediately. "The money and power thing actually makes everything harder." "And does she like you because you're a good person? Or does she like you because you don't want anything from her?" Marcus thought about this. "Both, maybe. She says I'm the only person who knew her before I knew about her money." "Okay, so you both have good reasons for being together. But you also both have to decide if those reasons are strong enough to deal with all the complications that come with your situation." "What do you mean?" "I mean, if you really care about each other, you'll find a way to make it work. But if you're just having fun dating someone exciting, all these work problems might not be worth it." After talking to Emma, Marcus realized he needed to figure out how he really felt about Victoria. Was this just a fun, exciting relationship, or was it something more serious? And if it was serious, what was he willing to sacrifice to make it work? The next day, Marcus made a decision. He asked for a meeting with Victoria in her office during work hours, so they could talk about their situation professionally. "I've been thinking about what you said about me transferring to a different department," Marcus said. "And? I'll do it, but only if you can promise me something." "What's that?" "Promise me that this relationship is important enough to you to deal with all the complications. Promise me that you're not going to decide it's too much trouble and break up with me as soon as I switch jobs." Victoria looked surprised by his directness. At work, Marcus usually spoke quietly and avoided conflict. But this situation had forced him to be more assertive than he had ever been before. "Marcus," Victoria said, "I can't promise you that any relationship will work out forever, But I can promise you that I care about you more than I've cared about anyone in a long time. I can promise you that I'm willing to work hard to make this relationship succeed. Even if it causes problems for you at work? Even if people gossip about your judgment or say you're not professional? I've spent my whole life making decisions based on what other people think is appropriate. Victoria said. I'm tired of that. I want to make decisions based on what makes me happy and what feels right to me. Okay, Marcus said. Then I'll talk to Human Resources about transferring to a different department. Are you sure? I don't want you to feel like I'm forcing you to change your career. You're not forcing me. I'm choosing to do this because I think what we have is worth some inconvenience and change. 6 months had passed since the night Marcus played piano at the company party. As he sat in his new office in the business development department, Marcus could hardly believe how much his life had changed. The transfer had been the best decision he could have made, both for his career and for his relationship with Victoria. His new job involved analyzing potential partnerships and expansion opportunities for the company. It was more creative and strategic than accounting had been, and Marcus discovered he had a talent for seeing patterns and possibilities that others missed. His background in accounting gave him a solid understanding of financial details, but his artistic side helped him think outside the box about business solutions. More importantly, working in a different department had solved the awkwardness with his coworkers. In business development, Marcus was judged purely on his ideas and results. His colleagues respected his work and treated him like any other team member. The gossip about his relationship with Victoria had mostly died down, especially after people saw that he was succeeding in his new role based on his own merit. Marcus was reviewing a report about potential expansion into overseas markets when his phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Can you come to my office? I have something to show you. Marcus smiled and texted back, on my way. Even after months of dating, Marcus still felt a little thrill when Victoria asked to see him during work hours. They were careful to keep their professional and personal lives separate at the office, but occasionally Victoria would ask for his input on a business matter, or they would share a quick coffee break together. When Marcus arrived at Victoria's office, he found her standing next to her desk with an excited expression on her face. On her desk was a thick manila folder and what looked like architectural plans. What's all this? Marcus asked. Remember when I told you about wanting my life to have more meaning beyond just making profits? Victoria said. Of course. Well, I've been working on something for the past few months and I wanted to show you before I announce it to the board. Victoria opened the folder and spread out the papers. Marcus could see plans for a building, financial projections, and program descriptions. I'm starting a foundation, Victoria explained. The Hartwell Foundation for Arts Education. We're going to build a community center that offers free music lessons, art classes, and cultural programs for kids who can't afford them otherwise. Marcus looked at the plans more closely. The building was beautiful, with large windows, practice rooms, art studios, and a small performance hall. Victoria, this is amazing, Marcus said, but this must cost a fortune to build and run. It will, Victoria agreed. But I have more money than I could ever spend, and I want to use it for something that matters. You know what inspired this idea? What? Watching you play piano that night at the party. Seeing how music transformed you. How it brought out a part of your personality that no one at work had ever seen. I started thinking about how many kids might have that same kind of talent but never get the chance to discover it because their families can't afford music lessons. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the scope and thoughtfulness of Victoria's plan. She had taken their conversations about meaningful work and turned them into something concrete that would help hundreds of children. There's more, Victoria said, pulling out another set of papers. I want you to help me run it. What do you mean? I want to offer you a position as the program director. You would be in charge of developing the music education curriculum, hiring teachers, and overseeing the day-to-day operations. You understand both the business side and the artistic side, which is exactly what this foundation needs. Marcus stared at the job description Victoria handed him. It was like someone had written down all of his secret dreams and turned them into a career opportunity. I don't know anything about running a foundation, Marcus said. You'll learn. Besides, you won't be doing it alone. I've already hired an experienced nonprofit administrator to handle the legal and financial aspects, but I need someone who understands what music education really means. someone who can connect with the kids we're trying to help. Marcus sat down in one of Victoria's office chairs, feeling dizzy with possibility. This would mean leaving Hartwell Industries completely. Yes, it would. The foundation will be separate from the company, with its own board of directors and everything. You wouldn't be working for me anymore. We'd be working together as partners in something we both believe in. The idea was exciting and terrifying at the same time. Marcus had just gotten comfortable in his new department, and now Victoria was offering him a chance to do something completely different. But as he looked at the architectural plans and program descriptions, he could imagine himself teaching children to play piano, helping them discover the same joy in music that had sustained him throughout his life. "Can I think about it?" Marcus asked. "Of course," Victoria said. "Take all the time you need. But Marcus, I want you to know that I'm not offering you this job because we're dating. I'm offering it to you because you're the right person for it. If we broke up tomorrow, I would still want you to run this program." That evening, Marcus and Victoria went to her house for dinner. Victoria had been practicing piano regularly, and after they ate, she played the Chopin Nocturne for him. She was right that she had been terrible at first, but months of practice had paid off. Her playing was careful and precise with moments of real beauty. "That was lovely," Marcus said when she finished. "You've improved so much." "I have a good inspiration," Victoria said, smiling at him. "There's something magical about having music back in my life. I feel like I'm remembering who I used to be before I became so focused on business." They sat together on the piano bench, and Marcus played a duet arrangement he had found, with Victoria playing the simpler melody, while he played the more complex accompaniment. It was not perfect. They had to stop and start over several times when one of them got confused, but it was fun in a way that Marcus had not experienced since he was a child playing with his first piano. "Teacher, I've been thinking about your job offer," Marcus said as they were cleaning up the kitchen later. "And? I'm scared," Marcus admitted. "This job would be completely different from anything I've ever done. What if I'm not good at it? What if I disappoint you?" Victoria dried her hands on a dish towel and turned to face him. "Marcus, do you remember what you told me about why you stopped studying music in college? I was afraid I wasn't good enough to make it as a professional musician. And how do you feel about that decision now?" Marcus thought about this. "I regret it. I think I gave up too easily because I was scared of failing. So what would you do differently if you could make that choice again?" "I would take the risk. I would try to pursue music even if it meant the possibility of failure." Victoria nodded. "This foundation job is your chance to make a different choice. You can play it safe and stay in business development, where you know you'll be successful. Or you can take a risk on something that combines your business skills with your passion for music." Marcus knew she was right. This opportunity was like a second chance to choose passion over security, but with the advantage of his business experience to help him succeed. "There's one more thing I'm worried about," Marcus said. "What's that?" "Working together so closely, spending all day every day on this project. What if it ruins our relationship? What if we get sick of each other?" Victoria smiled. "That's a risk too. But Marcus, I've spent the last few months watching you discover what you're really capable of. You've become more confident, more creative, more willing to take on challenges. Being with you has reminded me that I'm happiest when I'm working on something meaningful, instead of just making money. I think we bring out the best in each other. So you think it would work? Us running this foundation together? I think it would be the most fulfilling work either of us has ever done. And I think we're stronger as a team than we are separately." The next morning, Marcus called Victoria and accepted the job offer. They spent the following months working together to finalize the plans for the community center, hire staff, and develop programs. Marcus discovered that he loved the challenge of creating something from nothing, and Victoria loved being able to use her business expertise for a cause she cared about. The Hartwell Foundation Community Center opened on a Saturday morning in early fall. The first day of classes brought 30 children ages 6 to 16, eager to try piano, violin, guitar, and voice lessons. Marcus taught the beginner piano class, working with 8 kids who had never touched a piano before. Watching these children experience music for the first time reminded Marcus of his own first piano lesson. He saw the same wonder in their eyes that he had felt when he discovered he could make beautiful sounds by pressing the black and white keys. Several of the children showed real talent and enthusiasm, and Marcus felt proud to be part of giving them opportunities they might not have had otherwise. Victoria stopped by during the lunch break to see how the first day was going. She found Marcus in the main practice room, helping a 10-year-old girl named Sophia learn her first piece. "How's it going?" Victoria asked quietly. "It's perfect," Marcus said, and he meant it. For the first time in his adult life,